Okay, so I said this before that I do pay attention to a lot of things in science, engineering, architecture, biology, botany, basically chemistry, and all the. I have a lot of varied interests, and I do pay attention to as much as I can. But one of the things I like, I like to pay attention to is the high theoretical sciences, such as physics, um astrophysics, the ones that came up with string theory, the Big Bang, and the theoretical constants of Einstein, uh, and and the more and more I have observed between my own personal observations, things that I've seen, the stuff that I've been also garnered, that I've been able to garner from the scientific areas, um, have put questions, and it's based on what I consider just fanciful assumptions, and not really a lot of good observation. Uh, and these fanciful assumptions are often said to have validity due to the mathematical doing the math. And the thing is if you know anything about that, is that you can actually make math come out to whatever you want, and that's based on on your on how you're going about it, where you stand. Uh, if you accept the assumptions rather than trying to do the actual observations and being able to think on it uh, with a less imaginative look at it. So there's a lot of very exotic, I think, fanciful and illogical thinking behind a lot of these big things in those sciences. Um, Another one is like about the asteroid slamming in and causing the extinction of dinosaurs. That's something that I kind of accept, but there's also this nagging within me that kind of poo-poos it, and it's never gone away. No matter how much I looked at it, it has actually only gotten stronger over the years with the different sort of information that's coming out, and the contradictions, as well as certain other findings that kind of puts a huge crimp in those theories. And so, but this is something that happens way too much within the cosmological and other high end physics and science. And so, like Einstein's EMC squared, and laws. You know, there are certain aspects of it that that I find to be flawed. Uh, Newton just watching having an apple drop on him, and then, oh, it's assumption, gravity, and so the mathematics was done later, and that clarified and verified. Except it didn't do that for me, and it was because of the stuff that I was learning, and also because of observations and so on and so forth. And this is earlier in my life, and also whenever I have a problem, I get this really virulent and strong opposition within me. It's like it's almost a physical thing that reaction to these to the inadequacies that pop up or outright fantastical assumptions. String theory. I have a problem with string theory because there's a lot of fantastical assumptions made. The Big Bang Theory. I used to buy it more because to go along, but it came from something smaller than the size, of an atom. I was like, yeah, that hit me. That hit me, and I was like violently, and it's constantly that violent reaction has just grown and grown and grown, and so and we've seen and I've seen over the years where a lot of these principles of physics and science that were assumed to be correct are coming back to even with Einstein, the great Einstein. It's there are holes being poked in it constantly, and these holes are very credible. And so I've been making comments because I watch like Anton Petrov and other channels like that talk about science, engineering, and cosmological astronomy and so on and so forth. And I also pay attention to engineering, to such as the solid state lithium ion batteries, all sorts of other stuff. So I've started making a lot of comments some years back. Well, not a lot. I've started making some comments going back years back about a theory which I've been working on, percolating here for over 20 years. And these are observations I have made, and combining it with the knowledge I've been able to garner. It doesn't obfuscate all the scientific theories and so on, but it does poke huge holes in them that have put assumptions that have marred, I think, our progress in the scientific field. It has also propagated this tailoring of mathematics and other things to validate flawed ideas. And so let's start with with some basic stuff. When I was growing up, there was talk about galaxies, and in the beginning, they were talking about galaxies and how they didn't have at the time they didn't have the theory. They didn't have a theory out there that they were putting out to the public where they were saying that the reason why there's so much these huge globular points in the center of the galaxies were because were because of these the idea that stars and other matter were congealing on because of the gravitational clustering of giant stars and the remnant mass that wasn't didn't form planets or other stuff like that, and that always hit me wrong. And also, I think they said it was something to do with also with the way galaxies, the internal mechanism of the galaxies, and how that was what drew it, and so on and so forth, and then uh, and I think they even throw in stuff about because of supernova activity, and this may be where the like kind of like the an area where new stars are being born and new materials, all this other stuff. So, but it hit me wrong, and later on, because I was thinking, well, at the time I was accepting the theory of gravity, and and I said no, it couldn't be. It couldn't be it couldn't be what they talk about. It has to be something else. It has to be a force alone that does it and is pulling all that mass and matter towards it, and is keeping them in a sort of balance, and it's also causing other factors to happen. And it was some years later that they the theory of black holes and so on and so forth, and how the gravitational how the insane amount of gravity produced and so on and so forth. And I put one and two together, and I said, oh, it's got to be a gigantic black hole. That would give the best explanation for why every galaxy has that central globule. And it wasn't until some years later that the supermassive black hole theory came in to it. So that validated my what I thought. But there was, even with my own idea of the supermassive black hole in each galaxy, it was I always had a problem with the idea of gravity, and it was through to some observation, and also a lack of actual evidence beyond assumptions made. I can't think of the word beyond rudimentary things. A very rudimentary thing. God, I wish I could come up with a word. Uh, anyways, beyond that, so I had a problem, and I once again, I've always had that reaction to the idea of gravity, and some years, I think I was in my mid, I think I was around my mid 20s, uh, or was either between the late teens, mid 20s. Uh, it could have been even earlier. I'm not sure, but uh, there was, the whirlpool cyclones in that happen in seas and oceans, and how how things can be pulled in because of a spiral force that drew in water and other things that got too close. And the way black holes are explained, they operate very similarly. If you have enough, if you have enough kinetic energy in it, and so on and so forth, you can escape. Uh, Besides, that's the evolved black hole theory, whereas um, whereas earlier it was like nothing can escape. Um, and as we've been finding out that the whole thing of light not being able to escape, not even light being able to, may not be correct uh, because if that were the case, then the the way they found the black hole the was the release of energy in the form of light and others that was coming out. So it can't be true that light can't escape, but then it's producing that. It just doesn't equate. And so this is something I was thinking about before I even learned about the about all that energy and everything else. Uh, uh, the event horizon and so anyways, I started. I had a problem with the whole gravity idea, and then I was observing certain other things that gave me a hint. One of the things that I've always come to that I've come to believe strongly is this order in chaos. So if there's order, there must be chaos. If there's chaos, there must be order. Something to offset the other, a balance, the yin and the yang. Um, and so I didn't accept. I stopped trying to accept the idea of gravity and Newton and all that, and I started to think about why how would I look at this? How would I see it and figure out if gravity has legitimacy or if it's not? And then by seeing the later on seeing later on certain things that were popping up, like when CAT scans and MRIs and other stuff started coming around, and I started seeing that, as well as the observations that the universe seemed to be kind of flat. And it's not 360 degrees. It's sort of flat, and the way things moved, like the galaxies and everything else, um, and also like how big gas giants would pull in stellar matter, as well as how even planets like the Earth and the Sun and the Moon. So what I started what I started to think was that gravity is nothing more than the a depression. The depression. Now this is earlier before I added in something else, and what it is gravity is nothing more than a depression in space, uh, kind of like the whirlpool in a large body that spins and has a force that draws in matter that gets things that get too close and can't break away, and so on and so forth. And that's And that was really what gravity was. But that didn't explain. Like why that would affect, an apple falling from a tree and hitting you on the head when you're sitting under it, or if you drop something from a building. That wouldn't explain all of that. And so for years I was thinking about it, and then there was something, I forget exactly what, but finally something was talked about, but it was not in context. It had to do, I think, with something with gravity and folding and malleability of being able to fold or manipulate space. And then it hit me. I'm like, no, you know what? The reason why, another reason why the gravity, I thought gravity is a is a is a false assumption, is because space is a physical body, and space time is not one thing. Space and time is not the same thing. It's space is an individual body, a physical body, which is applying force from both sides, from above and from below. And what it's doing is it's trying to fill in where the physical matter and all the other stuff, with varying degrees depending on the size of the mass. So it has stronger opposition force on larger matter, where it has a weaker force for, say, like, light coming off stars, or smaller matter being able to travel through, and all that other stuff. So so the reason why we have what we call gravity on the planet, that gives us 1G and all that, which also applies to when we're flying airplanes and so on and so forth, is because space is actually pushing from both sides, trying to take back its original shape, and that is what we call gravity, and that is what affects the movement of larger objects, and creates the laws of thermodynamics and all sorts of other things. And space, and the other thing is the compression of space is what actually gives the temperature that of almost absolute zero. It's that compression, and it is also the compression and other dynamics which ignites a star, and so this goes on to that. Now, another theory that I've been working on for almost as long is this, that there isn't just one universe, and that universes are not infinite. They're not eternally infinite. Universes are finite. That the only infinite physical structure or body is space. And just like how within our universes we have galaxies, and there's large gaps between galaxies, as there is large gaps within within the solar systems, between planets and the stars, and everything else. The same dynamic works. There's a there's an unimaginable large gap that we can't see. Maybe we can see if we're on the outer edges of our universe. We may be able to see it and observe it, but from where we are, we can't. Uh, and what it is the reason why we're seeing certain points where the galaxies are moving faster towards those positions, and there are differences in the constants, as well as a possibility of differences in physics, of the laws of physics, and so on and so forth, and different dynamics playing out, is because it's the depressional well created by by a universe, which is which is which more than likely is a larger universe, uh, and it may create a bigger depressional event horizon that draws in lesser bodies within another universe. And it is that impetus that's pushing the galaxies quickly over to there. Not gravity, but the depressions in the physical universe, and the force that the universe, I mean the force that space is applying to fill in the distortion, which is created by the physical mass within the body of space. So so this and much of a lot of stuff that's coming out of the scientific field is starting to give credence to what I've been commenting on, and I've made some videos that are less well put as I've done with this one. So, anyways, the whole point is that just like in society, how we have this idea of economics and politics and social and society and everything else. There's a lot of assumptions and and ideas which are flawed. And we know that just because we know people used to worship suns and things like hurricanes and tornadoes, and they were all attributed to gods or this spiritual force or that. It's like, and then then it just goes on and on and on, and these are all false assumptions based on stuff that we didn't know, but the more and more we know, we can actually start to think and look at it critically and use observations as well as others who have invested their observation and their mental work to come up with answers. So I I think it's I think that this is something I've come to strongly believe, and is that if we change change the theories like the Big Bang. I don't think the Big Bang is a good theory. I think it's a false theory. And this goes on to black holes and white holes. So now, some years before white hole theory came out, and this is early on when the black hole theory came out, I said, I was like, I didn't like the theory. I didn't like the that he was just a roving, destructive thing that's just going around and basically destroying everything. Uh, and the problems I had with black hole theory uh, kind of has been validated. Actually, no, it has not kind of. It has validated the problems I've had with it. But I think it was like I think, and this is early on when and so I was in my I think I was in my I think my late teens when I had a problem with that. And so, uh, but before white hole theory became a mainstream thing, the whole idea of there must if there's chaos there must be order. So there must be an opposite to black holes. And so I didn't call it white hole. I just said, there must be an opposite. So, like, if there's a black hole sucking up matter from our universe, then there must be an opposite that's doing the same on another dimensional level, and taking matter from another dimensional level and putting it back, or it could be that the matter that's coming from our universe goes through a some subspace or dimension, and it's just being it's goes through and kind of loops back, but is changed for going into that tier in our space where our universe resides, and changing it or just recycling the matter back. So when I first heard about Whitehall, which was well over 10 years ago, I'm like, I felt validated. Now, this brings me to a more recent thinking that because I've always had a problem with the Big Bang theory. I've accepted it, but I accepted it to a point, but I really still had a problem with it. And so, this idea came to me like, well, between that and new observations, new studies, and so on and so forth that are coming through, which only strengthened my aversion to the Big Bang theory. I was thinking, could it be that that black holes and white holes have always been a factor? That it wasn't a Big Bang, but basically uh, basically white holes uh, breaking through from another dimensional universe as a black hole, uh, rapidly sending matter into sending matter into our universe, and these aren't just singular white holes, but in the trillions, and uh, and then the offshoot is that black holes uh, all had to balance out the white holes coming into our universe. Thereby putting, and so basically what we're talking about is a recycling of matter, and which also goes to the whole thing of the big crunch and so on and so forth. And how, see, that's another thing that I get a very high aversive reaction to. And so that just makes far more sense, and it also explains why there's uniformity within the outer reaches of the universe, uh, with the temperature. It also explains you know the rates, different rates of expansion. It also explains other anomalies that much of the uh, scientific theory and of astrophysics and physics. It just there's just too many holes, uh, too many fantastical imagination put into it. Uh, so um, I think if we if we do the observations like I've been talking about and how I explained it and look at it, I think it's more clear cut the way I'm talking and the way I'm looking at it. And if we do that and we base our mathematics on it, I think we could fundamentally change uh, many things, including how quickly we make innovative roads into actual space, being able to travel through space in our time, in our lifetime, and have starships and so on and so forth, and be able to have transporters and have these mega structures, uh, as well as contributing to health diagnostics, into medicine, into engineering, into every aspect. So, and I think it would also impact society, and also I think it would debunk the idea of God, or some other you know omnipotent or omnipression, omnipotent and God, I can't say the word. Um, well, some higher being. Um, I think it would give us a more simplified of cause and effect, and I think we wouldn't have to do so much fantastical thinking to know the universe and know existence. I think we would achieve far faster and far greater. And of course, there's always room for improvement and room for more insight. But this would be a big, gigantic improvement. So take it or leave it.